PFL number 3 this week from, again, Universal Studios in Orlando, Florida. This week it is the middleweights and the lightweights in the PFL World Tournament. It is the quarterfinals again this week, and we've got 9 fights on the card for now. I mean, these PFL cards always fall apart. They did last week. Hell, we got 4 different main events in the span of 6 days with that card, so hopefully this one holds up, and we've already had, some ins and outs here of the Kasanganay Fabian Edwards main event. This was originally supposed to be the main event, then Edwards pulled out. Jordan Newman took the fight against Kasanganay, but then Edwards went back in. And Jordan Newman, who was supposed to fight Murtazaliev, who we're going to get to in a second, pulled out of his fight. It's a mess. We'll get to all of it because this is what the PFL has been in 2025. But folks, before we get into the predictions, make sure to hit that subscribe button down below for some more weekly PFL videos here on the channel here on Greedo Plays MMA. We're on the road to 1,000 subscribers, so make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. We do this every single week. No UFC this week, but next week we'll be back for the Kansas City card. I believe it's in Kansas City, with Carlos Prates and Ian Machado Gary in the main event. Also, on the other channel, Greedo Plays, that's linked in the description down below. Go subscribe over there. Daily MLB best bets and NBA best bets as well. As first, before we get into the predictions, let's look at the brackets themselves, because I feel like that's important to do, like we've been doing. And here we go. We're going to start first with the middleweight bracket. Light heavyweights in 2 weeks. No PFL next week. 2 weeks, they'll have the quarterfinal card. So the middleweight bracket, obviously Kasanganay versus Fabian Edwards is the main event. On their side of the bracket, Mike Shipman versus Josh Silveira. That potentially sets up for a trilogy bout between Kasanganay and Silveira. Kasanganay's beat him in 2023 and in 2024, so maybe we get that fight again. Dalton Rosta Sadabusi is on the other side of the bracket, along with Aaron Jeffery versus Murad Ramazanov. In terms of the lightweight division, here it is. Alexander Chablis has pulled out. Alexander Chablis has pulled out, as you can see right here. Primus' new opponent is Vinicius Cenci, so we'll get to that in a couple minutes here. So Chablis out. He was one of the favorites to win this thing, I thought. Him and Rabadanov, obviously, and that was a tough fight for Primus. But again, Chablis out. Clay Collard takes on Alfie Davis. Gadzhi Rabadanov gets the former UFC veteran and Mark Diakiese, and then JJ Wilson gets Mads Burnell, 2 former Bellator fighters. So those are the brackets. Let's move on to the first of our 9 fights tonight, and we start in the middleweight division. This is the alternate fight. Now, guys, there's a very good chance one of these two, likely Murtazaliev, ends up in the actual bracket itself, right? If anybody in the middleweight division misses weight, Khalid Murtazaliev is going to be the first guy to fill in that role. If 2 guys pull out, Nick Maximov will then enter the bracket as well. So that's how the PFL's been going. I don't know what happens at lightweight. I think there's going to be an alternate fight. I believe Robert Watley is going to fight someone. Sergio Casio was supposed to be on this card. He pulled out. So we'll see what happens there. But right now, again, only 9 fights. Murtazaliev versus Nick Maximov. If the fight happens, should be interesting. I think Murtazaliev does win. Nick Maximov, you know him from the UFC. He's part of Nick Diaz's army. He trains in the 209 in Stockton, California. Was a former UFC fighter, went 2-2 over there. I remember watching Nick Maximov on the Contender Series. He came in from LFA, really good grappler, obviously, from, that Nick Diaz camp in Stockton. Fights Oscar Cota in his Contender Series bout in 2020. Beats Cota by unanimous decision. Maximov, a middleweight, goes up to heavyweight for that fight just to fill that fight on short notice. I think Cota was supposed to fight Jared Vandera, if I'm not mistaken. Anyways, Maximov wins the fight. Originally just gets offered to fight on The Ultimate Fighter. Maximov says no. Eventually just gets signed to the UFC. Fights Cody Brundage, beats him. He cashes as an underdog, beating Punahele Soriano. I think that was, and then he loses to Andre Petroski after that. He was the first fight of that card who the main event was, Blakovic and Rakic in the Apex. It was really weird. Petroski and Maximov kicked off the card, and Maximov was undefeated at the time. I remember questioning that, and actually, Nick Maximov liked my tweet that I was confused about why he was opening up the card. Regardless, he lost that fight. Then he lost to Jacob Malkoun. 3 straight victories after that, though, after being cut from the UFC, winning in Fury and in A1 Combat, the Uriah Faber-led promotion in Sacramento, California. I just think this is a tough fight from Maximov on short notice against a guy like Murtazaliev, who I think has decent takedown defense. I mean, that's what Murtazaliev is going to try to win the fight on the feet. I think that's where he has, really shined. The guy hasn't fought much. Again, he can wrestle as well. I just don't think, the guy against a guy of the grappling credentials like Maximov, I don't know how much of an advantage Murtazaliev is going to have there. But in Bellator, he's a 3-1 fighter. The loss to Anthony Adams isn't great. But this guy's had some really good fights over in Fight Nights Global, and yeah, that's all the way back in 2016 at this point, but not a bad kickboxer. Had one fight in the UFC in 2018, beat CB Dalloway. I think that's Dalloway's last ever fight in the UFC, I think. Yes, because then he came back and fought Yuri Prohashka and got brutally knocked out in the first round. Ryzen, regardless, Murtazaliev beat CB Dalloway. I believe that was a bad Herb Dean stoppage. Then goes to Bellator. He's 3-1. I just think, again, on short notice, it's going to be tough for Maximov to win this one. I think Murtazaliev should be able to beat him, and I think he'll win this one by decision. I think, again, he's coming into this one off a full camp. Maximov fought earlier this year in February, but the guys he's been beating 10-7 and a 7-8 fighter he fought in his last fight, Saeed Magomed Abduzugiev. Yeah, I'm going to go with Murtazaliev to stuff the takedowns of Maximov and win the fight. I think he wins a decision. We move on now to our first tournament fight of the night. We go to the lightweight division. I had to change the PFL graphic because they haven't even changed it on their own website yet. Regardless, our first fight will be Primus taking on Vinicius Cenci. I'm going with Primus to win the fight. Honestly, kind of like how Logan Storley lucked out and didn't have to fight his original opponent, Primus gets a much easier matchup in the first round against Vinicius Cenci. Right? I mean, Logan Storley is supposed to fight Magomed Umlatov. He gets Joseph Luciano instead, easily won the fight by decision. Primus was supposed to fight Chablis. I didn't think that fight was going to go too well for him. I think Chablis is really good. Obviously, his only loss in Bellator was to the champion in Usman Nurmagomedov, who I guess is still signed to the promotion. I don't know. You never know at the PFL these days. And with the GFL dead now, yikes, there goes a lot of opportunities for guys to get paid, but it is what it is. Chablis gets Cenci in this fight. I think he should be able to beat him. I think the easiest pathway to victory here for Primus, and I think it should be fairly easy, is through the grappling. Cenci, yes, this guy does have great grappling credentials, but when you look at this guy's past, it is very checkered. I think that's the proper usage of that word. It's a very shady past, honestly. This guy has fought a lot in Brazil. He fought, though, okay, so let's look at his record. Take a deep dive into his record post-pandemic. 2021 in October, he fights Hugo Gonzalez in Gladiator Challenge. He fights an 0-0 Hugo Gonzalez, and Tapology has marked that fight as bout has been flagged by Tapology for potential issues due to legitimacy. Yikes. Gets a shot in the Contender Series, gets choked out in the second round by Sam Patterson, then fights back-to-back fights in CWB Fight League, twice in 2023 over Gustavo Nogueira and Windor Valentino. Both of these guys are flagged as record ineligible in MMA due to stat padding fights, so I don't know if those fights are legitimate, so Tapology hasn't counted those as wins for him. So PFL's got his record at, well, they don't have his record because they haven't even put him on the website yet. I don't know what this guy's record is. He's really just, he's very fraudulent, guys, I'm not gonna lie. He's a King's MMA guy, camp in Huntington Beach, that's where Chikadze is, that's where the Benil Dariush still trains some there, if I'm not mistaken, RDA, Ozzy Diaz. It's not a, it's a fairly well-known camp in California, but the ultimate, record padding has happened here with Cenci, and it's just odd. I don't know how, I don't think this guy's legitimate at all. Fought in the Contender, did pick up a win in his last fight over Yabna, the Pancher T'Challa, won that fight by split decision in UAE Warriors, has not fought since. Primus should be able to destroy this guy. I don't think his grappling's all that good, and I get it, Primus is 40 years old. He can still grapple. He went to the finals of the PFL lightweight bracket tournament last year and lost to Gadzi Rabadanov by TKO in the third round. He's still more than capable, won 3 fights in 2024, choking out Bruno Miranda, choking out Solomon Renfro, and winning a decision in a main event against Clay Collard. I'm pretty confident that Primus is going to win this fight, and again, it's a new lease on life because I don't think that the Chablis fight was going to go too well for him. I really like Primus in this spot, though. He should be able to win this fight against Vinicius Cenci, and he'll get it done by unanimous decision. First round submission. Next up, we move to a matchup in the middleweight division. It's our first fight on this side of the bracket, or this bracket. It is going to be Aaron Jeffery versus Murad Ramazanov. Might be a hot take. I'm going Aaron Jeffery here, guys. I don't actually think Ramazanov's that good. We looked at looking at the tournament last year at welterweight. Ramazanov beats Laureano Staropoli in his first fight by rear naked choke in the first round. Staropoli is washed, let's just be honest. Then he fights Shamil Musayev in his second fight, loses by second round knockout, but he's already got enough points to get in the playoffs, so he fights Shamil Musayev again in the playoffs and loses by decision. He was 1-2 in the PFL last year. He gets brought back for this season. Where is Shamil Musayev? I don't know. But Ramazanov's back, and I think he's all right, but I just think if Aaron Jeffery's able to keep this fight on the feet, he's going to win. Ramazanov, he's going to get caught, as we saw in the Musayev fight. And don't get me wrong, I think Musayev is really good. I mean, as we've seen, I do really think that guy's a good fighter. But at the same time, Aaron Jeffery should be able to win this fight if he can keep it on the feet, which I'm anticipating him doing, right? Look at Jeffery. This guy's got power. I mean, well, okay, he doesn't have the most power, but if he does hit you, he's going to drop you. Hell, look at the Austin Vanderford victory. I get it, that's back in 2022 at this point, but Austin Vanderford now a winner in the UFC. Aaron Jeffery knocks him out in the first round, gets a fight against John Salter, which really set back his career. He lost that one, beats Dalton Rosta, who's also in this bracket, loses to Fabian Edwards, who's in the bracket as well, but he's coming off a victory over Douglas Lima, who's supposed to be in the Global Fight League. Obviously, that thing hasn't really turned out right now. We will see, but regardless, Aaron Jeffery is not horrible, and I think, again, if he's able to keep this fight standing against Ramazanov, he should be able to beat this guy, and I'm taking Aaron Jeffery to win by decision. You know, Aaron Jeffery was one of the, one of the highest touted prospects in MMA back in 2020 and 2021. He had a victory over Andre Petroski in LFA, and Petroski, was big stuff, obviously, in the Ultimate Fighter and still winning fights in the UFC. He wins the CFFC championship, and he just ran into Caio Borraio on the Contender Series. Well, look where Caio Borraio is now. I think if Jeffrey's able to keep this fight standing, he will win it. I'm taking Aaron Jeffery to beat Murad Ramazanov by unanimous decision. We move on now to our next fight, and we move to the lightweight division. Cassius Clay Collard takes on Alfie Davis. I think Clay Collard beats him. I think he does. Now, Clay Collard, him and Sada Boucy are just these guys who are in every single bracket for the PFL. They're here year in and year out, which is fine. I think, Sada Boucy is obviously a former champion in PFL. He's seen a lot more success than Collard has, but they've both been here for a while. Collard has lost 4 of his last 5 fights. Okay, that should be said. Okay, he's lost 4 of 5, dating back to the championship fight in 2023 after a win over Shane Burgos to get to the championship fight. He loses to OAM. By the way, where is Shane Burgos? Does that guy still fight? I don't know. He loses to Oliver Aben-Mercier, who obviously retired after. Clay Collard then loses to AJ McKee in the PFL versus Bellator card in Saudi Arabia. TKO's Patricky Pitbull, loses to Mads Burnell, but still gets in the playoffs, and then loses to Brent Primus. Yikes. I don't think Alfie Davis, though, is able to grapple his way out of this one. I don't think so. Davis is coming off a loss in his last fight to Mansour Barnawai, who's pretty solid, who is fighting for PFL Europe, if I'm not mistaken. Wins over Thibaut Gouti, Alan Cruz, Oscar Owensworth in Bellator, a draw against Tim Wild, a loss to Alexander Chablis. I mean, Alfie Davis, again, has been in Bellator for a minute. He's had 10 fights over there. He's 8-1-1. I think he's got a chance to beat Clay Collard, don't get me wrong, but I think Collard's going to be able to keep the fight on the feet, and I wouldn't, I don't think Alfie Davis is able to out-kickbox Clay Collard. Again, if he's able to take him down, we'll see, because Clay Collard's ground game does leave a lot to be desired. Let's just be honest. I mean, Brent Primus, Mads Burnell, AJ McKee submitted him. OAM, did both, obviously. Hell, even Hoosh Manfio gave Clay Collard a lot of trouble. A guy who's been exiled, I guess, from PFL at this point. Anyways, that guy, he lost in Detroit Grand Prix Fighting Championship. What the hell happened to Hoosh Manfio? Damn. Anyways, Clay Collard, again, if he's able to keep the fight standing, he should be able to beat Alfie Davis. We know the boxing pedigree of Collard. We've seen him go in here and beat guys like Shane Burgos, like Patricky Pitbull, like Jeremy Stevens, like Anthony Pettis in the PFL. He's won some huge fights over here. Alfie Davis is impressive, I understand. But Alfie Davis, to me, has never been able to make that next step in Bellator. Whenever he has been given big fights in Bellator, he has lost. Chablis, Barnawai. Yeah, he's been able to beat, just the others in Bellator. I mean, I guess Thibaut Gouti is his best victory. He hasn't been an elite level guy, though, yet in Bellator, like Chablis, like a Barnawai, and I think Clay Collard's able to beat him. He's going to be able to keep the fight on the feet. I think Collard outboxes Alfie Davis in this fight. Again, Cassius Clay Collard picks up the win by unanimous decision. We move on to our next fight, and we go back to the middleweight division. We have got Josh Silveira taking on Mike Shipman. I've gone back and forth on this fight. Originally, I think I said it last week or the week before, I was planning on picking Silveira. I've switched my pick to Mike Shipman. I think I've come to the realization that Silveira might just not be that good, which maybe took me too long to figure that out. But when I really looked at Josh Silveira's fights as a whole, and I really watched a lot of his fights over again, I have come to the realization again that he hasn't fought in that many good fighters, and when he has, he's lost. I mean, let's just look at this, right? Josh Silveira has always been, pushed in PFL. Let's just be honest, right? His father, Conan Silveira, is one of the head coaches at American Top Team, right? I mean, Silveira has been bred into mixed martial arts, obviously. But when you look at what he's done post-LFA, right? He was the LFA champion, highly touted prospect, but in PFL itself, whatever Martin Hamlet, all right. I mean, that's not horrible, knocking out Hamlet in the first round. Hamlet was kind of, 2022 wasn't really past his prime, but kinda, Hamlet hasn't been the same since losing to Shoeface in the championship back in 2021, and he hasn't fought since the Kasanganay knockout in 2023. Regardless, Silveira beats Hamlet, immediately goes to the playoffs after one victory, loses to Omar Yakhmedov, which I guess that was the end of the Yakhmedov prime, if you want to say. He was supposed to fight Derek Brunson in GFL. That fight got canceled. Anyways, Silveira then goes back in 2023, fights Sam Key, who has a losing record, submitted him, beats Delon Monte, who actually injured his knee in that fight, so he had back-to-back first-round finishes, gets the 1 seed, fights Ty Flores, who, was a loss to, I believe, Dustin Jacoby in the Contender Series, not that, promising of a guy, kind of up there in age. And then he loses a 5-round decision. He loses every single round to Impa Kasanganay in the championship fight. Okay, comes back in 2024, beats Sada Busi in his first fight due to Sada Busi dislocating his thumb in the first round. So another injury gave Silveira a first-round finish in 6 points. He loses to Rob Wilkinson, and Wilkinson coming off of being popped for steroids. Not a good fight. Wilkinson barely wins it by decision. And Silveira predictably loses 3 more rounds to Impa Kasanganay. So Kasanganay goes to the championship fight, and Silveira goes home. So really, when we look at this, Silveira's wins are not all that impressive. Yes, he's beat Sada Busi, but that was by injury. I guess his most impressive victory is Martin Hamlet. Now, for Mike Shipman, okay, and I will give Silveira this. I don't think Shipman's able to knock him out. Shipman has heavy hands. He's going to throw with everything he's got. Silveira's got a chin on him, man. Trust me, Impa Kasanganay hits hard. No, by the way, yes, Silveira going down to 185. That should be interesting. He's always fought at 205. So again, he's following Kasanganay down to middleweight. That's something, but the guy does have a chin. We'll see if he's able to take those same punches. Again, 20 pounds, weighing 20 pounds less. I know Kasanganay can make that weight, and I'll get to that later. I don't know if Silveira is going to be all that good at 185 pounds. Anyways, he's fighting Mike Shipman, who's coming off a very impressive victory in his last fight. Fought a former UAE Warriors champion in Islam Abdul Basset. TKOs him in the second round. Impressive victory. I believe he was a dog in that fight. Was an underdog. Cashes in that one. Beat Stephen Hill before that. Yeah, Shipman's lost some good guys in Bellator, but Costello Vinsteins, Fabian Edwards, the Gregory Babinet fight, it is what it is. I don't know, again, where does a guy like Babinet go? 5-1 in Bellator, lose to Costello Vinsteins, who was supposed to get a title fight. Where is Costello Vinsteins at, right? Well, I guess he fought last year in the PFL on the undercard when he was supposed to fight for a world championship in Bellator. It's so confusing what's going on right now. But Shipman can throw hard. He should be able to out-kickbox Silveira. I haven't really been impressed with Josh Silveira, I'm going to be honest. Yeah, he hits hard, but everybody hits hard, and Shipman's seen that before. He doesn't wrestle that great. Yeah, this feels like a Mike Shipman victory. I think the more damage is done by the British fighter here, and sure, I don't think he's going to be able to put away Silveira because, again, we've seen Josh Silveira take so many big shots from Kasanganay, hell, from Rob Wilkinson, too. Hell, even the Akhmedov fight. I know Akhmedov not known for his striking, but he was hitting Silveira hard, and Josh Silveira kept walking forward. He's a zombie of sorts. But Mike Shipman should be able to outstrike Josh Silveira. I'm going with the European fighter to win this fight by unanimous decision. Let's go to the main card. Starting things off in the lightweight division, maybe my toughest pick of the day to make. There's one more on this main card that I was really split on, the co-main event, but this one is tough. Mads Burnell, JJ Wilson. I don't know what the odds are for this fight, but at least on Tapology, 69% of voters are going with the Australian JJ Wilson, the New Zealand-born fighter, and 31% are going with the Danish fighter in Mads Burnell. I'm going to side with JJ Wilson hesitantly. I feel like this is a kind of passing of the guard fight, passing the torch. That's changing of the guard is what I was looking for. And not to say JJ Wilson's some, future superstar, but I was impressed with the victory over Mansar Barnawi. It's a fight that I don't really think anybody expected J.J. Wilson to win. He beats Burnell, who's very hyped up in his own right, very credentialed grappler, who since has won back-to-back fights and will be fighting Archie Colgan in the main event of PFL Europe 2. What a fight that is. We're going to see really how good Archie Colgan is. I'm very pumped for that. Taylor Lapelouse on that card, too. I mean, that PFL Europe's going to put together some really good cards this year, guys. I'm just saying. Anyways, if they don't fall apart. Regardless, huge victory for J.J. Wilson over Burnell. Prior to that, a Vladimir Tokov victory. His only loss in his entire career is Gadzhi Rabadanov, who's the reigning PFL champion, who J.J. Wilson could definitely see in this tournament. If he beats Mads Burnell, well, he's going to fight the winner of Rabadanov and Diakiese. So we'll get to that fight that's coming up in a minute here. For Mads Burnell, right, lost to Michael Dufault in his first fight, and kind of unknown Michael Dufault, let's just be honest. A guy who randomly showed up in the PFL coming off a Joe Giannetti victory in Cage Titans, beats Burnell, loses to Adam Piccolotti, but still gets in the playoffs and gets knocked out by Rabadanov, and now he's fighting in Samurai MMA over in Montreal, Quebec, Canada. It's on Fight Pass. Great. Maybe he's in line for a Contender Series shot. I don't know. I don't really think the UFC needs a guy like Dufault, I'll be honest. But anyways, actually, they need Canadian talent. I wouldn't be surprised. Anyways, Burnell comes back, beats Collard, and then beats Elvin Espinoza by decision. I'm afraid Mads Burnell, I know he's 31, this might sound harsh. He might be over the hill at 31 years of age. 31 years of age, guys. He might be, because I was really impressed with Burnell when he came into Bellator. He beats Saul Rogers, he beats Emmanuel Sanchez, and then I thought, and a lot of people thought he was going to beat Adam Borch, and we thought he was going to go on to fight Patricio Pitbull. He loses to Borch in a 5-round main event, and then, okay, they give him Pedro Carvalho. I remember saying at the time, I was like, all right, this is a layup fight. Like, they're just trying to get Mads Burnell back on track. Hell, Pedro Carvalho was the guy that Patricio Pitbull said when they were picking the tournament Grand Prix bracket. He said, I want number one easy fight. I want Pedro Carvalho. So, I mean, that's the first thing I always think of when I think about Carvalho. But then Carvalho beats Burnell by decision. He bounces back. He beats Justin Gonzalez, beats a 41-year-old Daniel Weichel, but then comes to PFL and loses to Dufault. But then back-to-back wins after that and beats their, somewhat highly touted prospect in Elvin Espinoza, a guy that they've been pushing for a while and trying to get, obviously, they got him into the tournament, lose to Rabadanov. But again, they like Espinoza a lot. He knocked out Adam Piccolotti. I thought Burnell was going to win that fight, but it's a surprising result at the same time. I think he was an underdog. I'm going with J.J. Wilson. I like what he has. Wilson can mix it up. The grappling's good. The striking's pretty solid as well. And I think he can out-kickbox Mads Burnell. I have not been impressed with Mads Burnell right now. He beats Clay Collard, but good grapplers can beat him, and guys who pose the threat of the takedown can beat Collard, and a very good threat of the takedown, obviously. And the Elvin Espinoza one was good, obviously, but I just think J.J. Wilson's better than Elvin Espinoza. I'm going with Wilson. I'm impressed right now. He's just hitting his prime, 27 years of age. He's 9-1. All 10 of those fights have been, 10-1. 10 of those 11 fights have been in the Bellator cage. Yeah, I'm going to go with J.J. Wilson to win this fight. I think he can do it in his PFL debut, and he's going to beat Mads Burnell and beat him by decision, where he will take on, I think, Gadzhi Rabadanov. I don't want to call it the easiest layup of the card, but unfortunately, it kind of does feel that way. Let's just be honest. Gadzhi Rabadanov versus Mark Diakiese. Mark Diakiese, after being a long-tenured UFC fighter, 15 fights over there at the UFC, made his UFC debut back at UFC 204, Bisping Henderson 2, has finally left the promotion to go to Bellator/PFL, right? We saw him against Tim Wilde in Bellator in September of last year after his split decision victory over Cal Fernandez marked his swan song in the UFC, and now he's here in the PFL tournament. Career-wise, was it a good decision for Diakiese? Well, personally, I don't think the UFC wanted him around anymore, because Diakiese, towards the tail end of his career, just adopted a wrestle-heavy approach and said, you know what, I get paid double what I normally do if I just go in here and wrestle and just lay on guys. Go get your money, dude. I'm not gonna, not gonna hate. Beats Tim Wilde, good performance. He's not gonna beat Gadzhi Rabadanov, though, because he won't be able to take down Rabadanov, at least not hold him down. At the same time, Rabadanov can outstrike Mark Diakiese. So I just don't know how he wins. I'm going to be honest, I don't know how anybody gets rid of Gadzhi Rabadanov in this tournament. I thought the biggest competition was Alexander Chablis. That would be a fight. That would be very close for me. I saw Chablis outstrike Tofik Musayev. Hell, I was there for that fight, and it was very impressive. What is Musayev doing now? He's back in Ryza? The UFC should sign Musayev because they're going to Azerbaijan. But regardless, I know he's 35, but still. It wouldn't hurt to have, a second Azerbaijani in the UFC? Anyways, I think, again, Chablis was definitely going to be the toughest test for Rabadanov in this tourney. But with him gone, I'm not going to lie, I think Rabadanov's next toughest challenge will be J.J. Wilson in the second round. I look at the other side of the bracket, I see Brent Primus, who will likely, I think, end up in the final, because we have Primus versus Collard in the second round. I think Primus wins again. And for the second straight year in a row, Brent Primus will fight Gadzi Rabadanov for the PFL Championship. Oh. I mean, Primus is 42 now, right? So Rabadanov's here to defend the championship. I assume he's going to, beat the brakes off Diakiese. Diakiese feels like he should be older. He's 32. So him and Rabadanov are virtually the same age. Rabadanov's a year younger, but, Diakiese's just been around for a while at the UFC, right? I mean, hell, he made his debut back in 2016 in the promotion. But yeah, Rabadanov will be able to beat Diakiese. On the feet and on the ground, Rabadanov just has him everywhere. And again, I think it's going to be really tough for someone to beat Rabadanov right now in the PFL, especially with Chablis gone. We'll see. But give me Gadzi Rabadanov to beat Mark Diakiese. He should get it done by unanimous decision. We move on to our co-main event. This is the other fight that was really close for me to pick, or tough for me to pick. Dalton Rosta versus maybe the PFL GOAT, Sadabusi. Nah, it's probably Magomed Karamov, Ray Cooper. I don't know who the PFL GOAT is. It might be Sadabusi. I know record-wise, Sadabusi's the Cowboy Cerrone of PFL. That's a good comp. 11-6-2 and 1 no contest in the PFL. That's a lot of fights. This will be walk number 21 to the PFL. They're not calling it a smart cage anymore, but to the PFL cage for Sadabusi. Could have been in the playoffs last year because I think, and a lot of people thought he was going to beat Josh Silveira. He just popped his thumb out in the first round. So Silveira won. Sadabu couldn't continue. He comes back and beats Andrew Sanchez in his second fight in the regular season. Knocks him out in the third round. If he would have just beat Silveira and won a decision, yeah, he would have been in the playoffs. And I think he likely would have got Kasanganay in the first round, right? Probably would have lost. But anyways, Sadabusi's getting a chance to fight Impa Kasanganay this year if they can both make it to the championship. Regardless, Sadabusi gets Dalton Rosta. I think Rosta beats him. I think. I'm going to, again, like we did earlier, with that fight between Mads Burnell and J.J. Wilson, I'm going kind of same theme on this one. I'm taking the younger fighter in Dalton Rosta. Sadabu's old, man. He's 38. And I appreciate what Swedish Denzel has done for the PFL. I think Dalton Rosta poses a tough challenge for him in terms of the non-stop pressure that Rosta can bring. The decent striking that he's got. He's developed a very solid striking game. The wrestling credentials as well. I think it's a tough stylistic fight. And Dalton Rosta's last victory, I picked him to beat Noveni in Bellator. A lot of people thought Rosta lost that fight. I thought the decision wasn't horrible. I didn't mind the majority decision for Rosta. His only loss in his professional career is Aaron Jeffery. And we have him beating Ramazanov on this card. I think Rosta's just going to be able to pressure Sadabu. And if he doesn't get caught, I think he should be able to beat C. Again, the only way I see Dalton Rosta losing, and don't get me wrong, it's a way that C can 100% win this fight, but it's an outcome that could happen, obviously. But the only way Sadabu wins, I think, is if he keeps distance, stays at range, and out kickboxes Rosta, works the body, uses his kicks, and uses the reach advantage. He's going to have a 6-inch reach advantage in this fight. Dalton Rosta is 6 feet tall, 74 inches of reach. Sadabu 6'3", 80 inches of reach. Right? I mean, Sadabu at 185, this is the same weight class that he won the world championship in 2022. Sorry, no, that was welterweight when he beat Delano Taylor. He really went all the way up to 205. Why did he do that? Why? Anyways, yeah, I guess, yeah. Sadabu, man, went to back-to-back title fights, though. I don't know. He's never fought 85, right? Since what, 2019 he was at 85? No, he's at 70 then too. It was 18 he fought at 85 when he lost to Abus Magomedov in the semifinals. It's been 7 years since he's fought at middleweight. And at some point, again, how many fights can you have? Sadabu C, again, 38 years of age. He's always been active. He's never missed a PFL season. I think, again, they are going to let Sadabu C in this tournament for as long as he wants to be in this tournament because, again, he was in the very first one back in 2018. I'm taking Dalton Rosta. I'm taking Rosta to win by decision. I think, again, he's too young, too quick. I think the pressure is going to be too much for Sadabu. So I'm going Dalton Rosta, and I just think, again, he's 10 years younger. I'm going Rosta to win the fight by decision. To the main event. Sticking in the middleweight division, Impa Kasanganay takes on Fabian Edwards. I've always thought that middleweight is Kasanganay's division. I've always thought that. It's just they haven't always had middleweight, right? They've always done the welterweight to 205 jump. And on top of that as well, Kasanganay got the call to fight at 205 relatively short notice. He was a fill-in coming from the Challenger Series where he beat Osama El Saidi, and so he just stuck with 205 and ran with it after winning the championship in 2023. Now, I've been incredibly impressed with Kasanganay's run in PFL. I think that's no secret if you've watched the channel before, or at least on Greedo Plays, if you've watched the PFL videos, and hell, even on the UFC videos. I mean, I've talked about every single Impa Kasanganay fight he's ever had, and we've picked him in almost every single fight he's had with the exception of the Johnny Eblen fight, right? Where ultimately I thought Kasanganay actually won that one. Anyways, yeah, we've talked about pretty much every Impa fight that he's had. And I've always watched Impa's career very closely. I was incredibly impressed with him on the Contender Series because of the activity, because of the volume he throws. And that was back when he was fighting at welterweight / middleweight. He was fighting at, he's fought at both divisions, but he came to the UFC as a middleweight. Got his contract, beat Maki Pitolo, lost to Joaquin Buckley, beat Sasha Planatlikov, loses to Carlson Harris, gets cut, comes back, goes to the PFL, beats Al Saidi, submits Corey Hendricks, gets into the season, beats Tim Karan, knocks out Martin Hamlet, and then beats Josh Silveira and becomes a world champion. Has the fight against Eblen, I think he won, I'll be honest. I've scored rounds 1 and 2 for Impa Kasanganay. Thought he got robbed. Struck out Eblen in the first 2 rounds. And then he comes back in 2024, right? Beats Alex Polizzi, beats Jakob Neto, 2 great fights. I mean, those fights solidified Kasanganay as a PFL legend, let's just be honest. Those fights were not technically sound, but they were very fun fights. Kasanganay didn't care how much he got hit, and he ultimately won both of those fights. He beats Josh Silveira, and then he gets knocked down in the first round by Duvaljan Yagashidnamirdov. I think that was the fight where Kasanganay's lack of size finally caught up to him. Because he is so skilled, and because he does throw so hard, the lack of height was able, he made up for that in the Polizzi fight, the Neto fight. Hell, Silveira is really just an 85-pounder fighting at 205 as well, and that's apparent with him fighting in this tournament as well at 85. Hell, even look at Martin Hamlet back in 2023. That's a middleweight who went up to 205. He fought Shoeface, who both guys have had their fights at 205, but originally Hamlet and Carlos Jr. were 185-pounders. I think even Corey Hendricks used to fight at 185 pounds as well. So Kasanganay was fighting a lot of middleweights, which, not to his fault, he was the best middleweight that went up to 205. It's just, that's what happens when the PFL doesn't have a 185-pound weight class. Now they have one, and it should benefit him a lot. I think Kasanganay is going to be much better at 185. He has to cut some weight now, but he should be a lot better here. Fabian Edwards does present another challenge because he is bigger than Impa, size-wise. Fabian's 6'1", Kasanganay's 5'11". I kind of think he's 5'10", I'll be honest with you, I don't know. But anyways, Fabian's gonna be much taller than this fight. But the thing is, that's no problem for Kasanganay because he's been dealing with this his entire run. And I think something that's not getting talked about, well, I don't see much discourse about PFL, I'll be honest, so I feel like I'm the only one talking about it. Anyways, I think Impa can take Fabian Edwards down and hold him down in this fight. Kasanganay doesn't always go to that, but now there is no more, and for Impa, who always starts a war, but there is no more fighting for points, on the standings. You just got to win in advance. So if he can find his best pathway to victory here, which I do think is the wrestling, all right, let's go for it. Don't get me wrong. I think he can definitely out-kickbox Fabian Edwards. Edwards is okay. He's a little hesitant to pull the trigger at times. He's okay. But what Impa should do in this fighting is wrestle Fabian Edwards. Look what he did when he first came to the PFL and he beat Tim Karan, took him down, arm triangle choke, fight over. Yes, he's a good kickboxer, but he's not a bad wrestler as well, and he's so strong, especially I think he'll be even stronger at 185 pounds, just because of the guys he's fighting. Look how Johnny Eblen beat Fabian Edwards. Look how Austin Vanderford and Costel Van Steens beat Fabian Edwards. That pathway is there. Edwards he's not going to knock out Impa. And that's something that has concerned me some with Kasanganay, is him getting knocked out. He's been knocked out 3 times in his career now. Carlson Harris knocked him out at 170 pounds in the UFC. You all know the Buckley knockout fight. And then Duvaljan caught up to him again, a true light heavyweight, beat him in the championship fight back last year. I think this is a harder fight than the Jordan Newman fight. Originally, I was going to talk about that fight where I was a little concerned with Impa because what Nurulaliyev. Jordan Newman's last opponent Newman would always catch him coming in, and that's what Kasanganay does a lot. He wings a bunch of shots, and he just tries to close distance with his overhands because he is shorter than his opponents, and hell, he's going to be shorter against Fabian Edwards. That's what I was a little concerned with Kasanganay with Newman. I still thought he was going to win, but there was no pathway to the wrestling. Newman is a collegiate wrestler. There is the pathway here. Edwards is not the best wrestler. Hell, we've seen it with his brother. I know, again, they're not the same fighter, but there's a lack of wrestling out the Edwards brothers, and Kasanganay should be able to close distance here, find his shots, and look for the takedown. At the same time, I'm not scared about a Fabian Edwards knockout. Again, the Fabian Edwards knockout poses the same threat that a Leon Edwards knockout does. Oh, headshot dead, that's your whole gimmick, but if you're not able to find that one shot, you're probably going to lose and get dominated on the ground. And even if it is a striking fight, I don't think Fabian Edwards is going to find a way towards the knockout. What is his... Guys, Fabian Edwards has knocked one guy out in the last 7 years, and that was a 40-plus-year-old Lyoto Machida in a fight that made no sense in Bellator back in 2022. It was such an odd fight. That was weird. I was making... I did pick Lyoto Machida to win that fight. Okay, guys, I was like ultimate hate watching Fabian Edwards at the time. I think that was kind of a joke pitch. No, it wasn't a joke pick, because I think... Was Lyoto actually favored in that fight? Oh my god, the odds were close. Okay, at the time, that wasn't that crazy of a pick. Anyways, that video's on the Greedo Plays channel if you want to watch it. Regardless, I'm taking Impa Kasanganay to beat Fabian Edwards. I think he's got this in the bag, and I think the wrestling is going to be the easiest pathway to victory here for Impa. And he gets Mike Shipman in the next round. Should be a war that Impa can win, and I think Kasanganay, again, is well on his way to fighting for another world championship. I think he's the best guy in the bracket. I think Edwards is probably the toughest opponent he's going to face. And if Jeffery gets rid of Murad Ramazanov, which I think he's going to. I think Ramazanov has, he got some stuff, but I don't think, again, he's the best all-around fighter. I think we're probably going to see him put Kasanganay and Aaron Jeffery fight for a world championship. Maybe Don Rosta. But I think it's a very favorable bracket for Kasanganay, who continues to carry the flag for the PFL. It is a tough first fight, don't get me wrong. They just want a big-time fight in the main event, so that's why they put Edwards here. If they really wanted to get Kasanganay through to the finals, they just would have had him fight Josh Silveira for the third time. So we'll see. I'm taking Impa Kasanganay to beat Fabian Edwards in the main event by unanimous decision. So folks, thank y'all for watching our PFL World Tournament number 3 predictions here on the channel. Make sure to hit that subscribe button down below for more. Make sure to leave a like if you did enjoy the video. Make sure to comment if you do disagree with any of the picks. We'll be back next week for our UFC Fight Night Machado Gary versus Prates full card predictions, and back with the PFL in 2 weeks, where the main event is going to be Phil Davis and Rob Wilkinson in the light heavyweight division. We also got the heavyweights on that card, some random UFC names on that card, Alexander Romanov, Rodrigo Nascimento, and more. So make sure to join us for that in a couple weeks, folks. UFC next week. Thank y'all for watching, and Mamba forever.